Shrink the size of government, not slow its growth rate, but shrink the size of government. I'm the only candidate that has done that. Everybody else talks about it. We've actually cut our budget 26%, 30,000 fewer state bureaucrats. No other governor running has reduced their size of government. None of the senators do it. They give great speeches. They filibuster. They got big bladders. Doesn't qualify them to be president. We've got a first-term senator in the White House today. We can't afford more on-the-job training. When it comes to the tax code, look, we're going to put out a detailed tax code. I think you're right. We've got to have a tax code that is much simpler, lower, flatter, doesn't have all this power for the IRS. Right, one of the most dangerous questions during the whole Supreme Court case was when Alito asked the Solicitor General for Obama, if we rule the way you want, what's going to happen? He basically said, what's going to happen, to the status for these schools and other institutions? And the Solicitor General didn't say, oh, yeah, don't worry about it. He said, oh, yeah, that's an interesting question. So what happens if the IRS, when they start coming after Christian businesses and pastors and churches and others with a traditional view of marriage? We've already seen the scandals in this administration when the IRS go after conservative groups for their beliefs. Just, things we didn't think were imaginable are happening, and nobody goes to jail. Nobody loses their jobs. Nothing happens as a consequence. So we do need to dramatically reduce the size of the federal government, not slow its growth rate, but actually shrink the size of the government.
I don't think you gave me an answer on the IRS.
Oh, on the IRS, the tax code, again, we're coming out with a detailed plan. We're still working on that, but a lower, flatter tax code without the power for the IRS, I think you have to take the ambiguity out of the tax code, and that means both sides have to give up their special perks, carve-outs, and that means both of them have to stop listening to these lobbyists. I'm for the last time we had successful tax reform, I think, was under Reagan, when he dramatically simplified the tax code and made it much simpler, much flatter.
Okay, so I'm going to just go through a couple of things, and if you can kind of keep the answers short, because I just want to squeeze in as much as we possibly can. So as we're talking about, making the government much, much smaller, we have some real serious issues. One of my problems is the State Department. I mean, the State Department is out of control. They are doing everything they can to run the world and run us into the ground, making deals with people like Iran is not a good idea. Any president that comes in, George W. Bush told me, don't worry, your next president comes in, he's going to do much the same thing because he's going to have the same kind of advisors. And it's true. Obama is doing exactly the same kind of stuff that George W. Bush did in many ways. How do you get rid, or how do you fire the people in the State Department? How do you get that under control?
Yeah, two things. One, you do have to be willing to fire a bunch of folks in a bunch of agencies, including the State Department. They've gotten too big, too bureaucratic. These unelected bureaucrats think that they run things and they're going to be there long after you're gone. We want them projecting U.S. values across the world, and too often they're coming back trying to convince us to adopt the values of folks they're supposed to be proselytizing too. And secondly, I think it also, the people the president appoints, too often they go native. And Glenn, they'll go to these departments and come back and start evangelizing to the White House. They start trying to advocate for their departments instead of bringing the president's values to those departments. We need committed conservatives, not only on the court, especially on the court, but also in the cabinet and these appointees that are out there understanding that their job's not to grow their budgets, their influence, their power, but rather it's to shrink the government, bring the president's values into their agencies.